Hey y'all, it's Rick here with Uncommon Communion, and this is going to take the place of my written post that I usually get out on Tuesdays. So I'll tell you a little bit more about why I am doing that. Before that, though, let's begin as we always begin by recognizing, realizing, affirming, and celebrating that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of God and each other. So, one thing that I have learned, and I learned this back when I was a teacher. Back when I was a teacher, it had to do with creating lessons and assignments, right, in that category, and grading those assignments, right? What I found was that I could do one or the other pretty well. Now, the challenge is when you're teaching a course, a class for the first time, and I think I've talked a little bit about this. I was a Catholic high school religion teacher for 18 years of my career. And as such, they would often give teachers multiple preps, and you'd have a new course that you would need to teach. And what I found was when I was having to create lessons and tests, etc., and grade those lesson homework and tests, it just became to be a lot. What I'm finding here is that in creating content, it is also difficult to have the time and the bandwidth to consume content. Now, that's not usually a problem. I do have a fair amount of time in my life. I'll be honest, my wife and me, we are empty nesters. So the child raising that I used to have, it's not the same. They're adults. And the thing though is that as I am creating content, I don't have as much time to read, which is my primary way of enjoying, consuming content, nor watching TV or movies, which I've kind of fallen away from recently. So that hasn't really been a thing. All of this is intro to what I was doing this evening, which was watching a TV show. Now, of course, TV means streaming. It's on Disney Plus. It's the show Andor. Now, I don't know if we have any Star Wars fans out there. I am an OG Star Wars fan. All right. And um, as such, seeing some of the TV shows has been really exciting. I've seen all the movies, of course, but seeing the TV shows, right? I particularly enjoyed The Mandalorian. Baby Yoda was such a cool thing, and that character, and that was awesome. But I knew Andor was in its second season, which I guess was its last season, and I hadn't watched any of those shows until I was listening to a Substack live recently, and they had a guest on who was with the group Indivisible. Right, that's one of the resistance groups that grew up during the first Trump regime, and is continuing to be active, being behind the protests and the rallies and so forth. Anyway, this representative for that group was saying that they are making an effort to connect what they are doing and what they are urging all of us to do to resist the regime, right? The last protest this past Saturday, I love how they named the protests. The last protest was Rage Against the Regime. I thought that was pretty cool. But they're trying to connect what they're doing there in real life, IRL, as the kids say, right, with the plot and the heart of the Andor TV show. And he went into it and described a little bit. He didn't do any spoilers, which was good. Kind of more thematic ideas, but it got me thinking. I love Star Wars. I haven't really watched anything for a while, so that's what I was doing this evening. And what it did was it put me late to come here and sit down. So I am not writing tonight, as I said before. It's a lot shorter to just record. So that is what I'm doing because y'all, I appreciate your watching. I appreciate your reading. I watch my numbers each day, and it really looks like many of you have made this a part of your routine, right? Because I'm seeing roughly the same amount of numbers each day and roughly the same time. Some of y'all seem to be kind of early risers because I post this at 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern. The writing, the videos post immediately. There's no delay on the videos. But I really appreciate that. And I have made a commitment to do 7 days a week worth of content. And especially those of you who are paid subscribers, there's only a handful, always room for a few more. But I really appreciate, and I've given you that extra, which is the music, which this is taking the place of. So I'll talk more about Andor later, once I think I've finished the first season. And I'm sure some of you have seen it. You've seen all, 24 episodes. I have not. I'm on episode 8 of the first season, and it's amazing. I am really, really enjoying it. And I'm listening to a couple podcasts. That's one of my favorite things when I watch these prestige shows, is to follow along with the podcasts and to hear that background and thought and so forth. So I will talk more about Andor later. What I did want to share is what I came across today in one of my 3 readers that I do each morning on my Kindle. One of them, and I've talked about this many times, is the Ignatian Book of Days. And here's the reflection for August 4th, which it still is. It's not quite midnight yet. But I'll read this at length because I really like how he puts this, because I think the author of this is laying out a plan or some tools or strategies that you and I can use day to day, moment to moment, to be able to deepen our connection with what I like to call the more, which is God, right? So here's what the writer says, and the writer is Howard Gray, and it comes from, he was a Jesuit. He says, Ignatius's method for letting God shine through life's realities. So I'm not sure if that's a book title or probably a book title, but here we go. Ignatius counseled his young novices to do the following. These are Jesuits. First, bring focus to your life by taking the time to listen to others to see what lies before you. Give your attention to what is really there. Let that person or that poem or that social injustice or that scientific experiment become as genuinely itself as it can be. I'll stop here before I get to the second and third parts, but I love what he says here is pay attention, right? Pay attention. Be present. Don't be distracted. Don't be on your phone. Don't be in your head. Don't be in the future, the past, but be in the present, right? And he puts 4 things here. He says, let that person, the poem, the social injustice, or that scientific experiment, right? And obviously, that's only a very short list of all of the many, many things that we can encounter as we, live our lives. But I like that he says that any of those can be an entryway, a doorway, a pathway, a portal into the depth and the fullness of God. So he goes on to say, then reverence what you see before you. If you do this, Ignatius urged, then you will gradually discover devotion, the singularly moving way in which God works in that situation, revealing goodness and fragility, beauty and truth, pain and anguish, wisdom and ingenuity. Attention, reverence, and devotion establish the process for finding God in all things. Let me say that again, and I think I'm going to put this in the title of this episode. Attention, reverence, and devotion. And one leads to the next, right? Because what he is saying is that as we see or hear or taste or touch or smell, our senses, right? as we see whatever is before us, we begin to revere it, right? We begin to recognize the sanctity, the holiness of everything, right? And why is everything holy? Because God made it, right? And even more so because if you follow the way of Christ, you hold that God entered into this creation. So God just isn't a creator who just, waved a magic wand and stepped back. No, God entered into that and participates in that always. And then once we do that and see that whatever we're encountering is, again, a portal to God, then we can have devotion. And that's how we find God in all things, which is at the heart of the Jesuit, the Ignatian spirituality. Each of these today each of these little reflections end with sort of a thought and a little assignment. And here's what it says. Maybe this can be a thought or an assignment as you begin your Wednesday, which Wednesday begins here in just a few minutes. Art teachers say that learning how to draw is basically a matter of learning how to see. Give your attention to what is really there. I'm a terrible drawer. I am awful. But I'm a pretty good photographer. Not great. I'm learning. I'm going to get better. But I do think I have an eye, and hopefully you have seen this as I share photos here in my stack, that I have an eye for seeing what is there, the angles and the light and the shadow and the framing, the composition, etc. Right? So, yeah, I like that. See what is already there. And then here's the thought, and this will lead us out into prayer. Pause today and give some concentrated attention to some familiar object of your daily life, right? So just pay attention. Whatever it is that you're doing, do it. Taste it, smell it, touch it, feel it, hear it, see it, all of that. And reverence it, because it is a gift, it is grace, it is good, it is of God. Well, let's close with the Serenity Prayer. I like to use the we version. Say it with me if you know it. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom. I usually touch my gut when I do that. That's where the wisdom is, in the gut. The wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. Amen. All right. Thanks, y'all. Blessing and good. Be gentle. Be well. See ya.